The day my husband handed me the divorce papers, he couldn't even look me in the eye. His mother stood behind him with a satisfied smile.
"Sign them," she said.
A real wife gives her husband children. My hands trembled as I stared at the medical report lying on the table. The report that claimed I would never have children. The report that had destroyed my marriage. The report I had spent months blaming myself for. I signed the papers. Then I walked home alone. 30 minutes later, someone knocked on my front door. It was my neighbor, the county sheriff, and he was holding a file with my name on it. My name is Emma Carter, and I was 32 years old when a single piece of paper destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. For 7 years, I had been happily married to my husband, Ryan. We weren't wealthy, but we had built a comfortable life together in a quiet Texas town. We shared dreams, supported each other through challenges, and talked often about starting a family. At least, we used to. The pressure started with Ryan's mother, Patricia. At first, her comments seemed harmless. "So, when are you two finally giving me grandchildren?" she'd ask during family dinners. I would laugh politely and change the subject. But as the years passed, her questions became accusations. Every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering turned into another opportunity for her to remind everyone that I wasn't pregnant. "Some women know how to make a family a priority," she would say loudly enough for everyone to hear. Ryan usually ignored her remarks. Unfortunately, ignoring them didn't make them disappear. After months of constant pressure, Ryan suggested that we both undergo medical testing just to ease everyone's concerns. I agreed. I wasn't worried. I had no reason to be. A week later, we sat inside a doctor's office waiting for the results. The doctor looked serious. Too serious. "I'm sorry," he said, sliding a report across the desk. "The results indicate that natural pregnancy is extremely unlikely." The room seemed to spin around me. I stared at the words on the report, unable to process them. Ryan sat frozen beside me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then, the doctor added something that shattered me completely. "Unfortunately, these conditions are often permanent." I felt like someone had stolen the future I had imagined for myself. The drive home was silent. Ryan barely spoke. Over the following weeks, the distance between us grew. The man who once held my hand through every challenge suddenly seemed like a stranger. Meanwhile, Patricia acted as if she had won some kind of competition. She stopped pretending to be sympathetic. "You should do the right thing," she told me one afternoon. "Ryan deserves a real family." Those words haunted me. Months later, Ryan placed divorce papers on our kitchen table. His hands shook. His eyes stayed fixed on the floor. "I'm sorry, Emma," he whispered. Patricia stood behind him with a satisfied smile. A real wife doesn't stand in the way of a man's future. My heart broke, not because of the divorce, but because the man I loved never once questioned the report that had destroyed our marriage. I signed the papers. Then I left. Half an hour later, I was sitting alone in my living room when someone knocked on my front door. When I opened it, my neighbor, Sheriff Daniel Brooks, stood there holding a thick file. His expression was unusually serious. "Emma," he said quietly, "I need to ask you about the doctor who gave you that diagnosis." I stared at Sheriff Daniel Brooks, certain I had misheard him. "The doctor?" I asked. Daniel nodded and stepped inside. "I know this is difficult, but I need to ask a few questions." My stomach tightened. For months, I had blamed myself for everything. For the failed marriage. For the constant arguments. For the future Ryan and I would never have. Now the sheriff was standing in my living room asking questions about the one person I had trusted most. "The doctor who diagnosed you has been named in several complaints," Daniel explained. Nothing was proven at the time, but a recent investigation uncovered something suspicious. My pulse quickened. "What kind of investigation?" Daniel opened the file. "We found evidence that certain medical records may have been altered." The room went silent. I felt my heart pounding against my ribs. "Are you saying my diagnosis could be wrong?" "I don't know yet," he replied honestly, "but I think it's possible." The next morning, Daniel arranged for me to visit an independent specialist in a neighboring county. The tests took hours. Waiting for the results felt even worse. When the specialist finally entered the room, she looked confused. "Emma," she said carefully, "there is nothing in your records that supports the diagnosis you were given." I froze. "What?" She reviewed the scans again. "Based on these results, there is no medical reason you couldn't have children." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Months of guilt, heartbreak, and self-blame crashed into a single overwhelming realization. The original report had been false. I left the clinic shaking. But the worst part came later that afternoon. Daniel called me. "Emma, I found financial records." My stomach dropped. "What records?" "There was a payment made to the doctor's consulting company shortly before your diagnosis." I gripped the phone tighter. "Who made the payment?" For several seconds, Daniel said nothing. Then he answered, "Patricia." My knees nearly gave out. The amount wasn't enormous, but it was enough to raise serious questions. Enough to suggest that my mother-in-law had met with the doctor before I ever entered his office. I thought Ryan would finally believe me. I was wrong. When I showed him the evidence, he looked overwhelmed. "This doesn't prove anything," he said. "Ryan, your mother paid him. Maybe there's another explanation." His refusal hurt more than the divorce papers ever had. But Daniel wasn't finished investigating. 2 days later, he called again. This time his voice sounded different, more serious. "Emma, we've uncovered something bigger." My heart sank. "What is it?" The doctor didn't just alter one report. I heard papers shuffling. "There are multiple victims." My blood ran cold. Then Daniel delivered the news that changed everything. "We also found a witness willing to testify." "Who?" I asked. Daniel took a deep breath. "The doctor's former assistant." And according to her, Patricia wasn't the only person involved in the scheme. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Patricia wasn't the only person involved? The question echoed in my mind for days as Sheriff Daniel Brooks continued gathering evidence. Then everything finally came together. The doctor's former assistant agreed to provide a sworn statement. She handed investigators emails, payment records, and appointment logs that had been hidden for years. The evidence was overwhelming. According to her testimony, Patricia had approached the doctor months before my appointment. She wanted a way to convince Ryan that I could never give him children. The doctor, motivated by money, agreed. Together, they arranged for false information to be placed in my medical file. But the assistant revealed something even more shocking. Patricia had done similar things before. Not to me. To other women connected to families she wanted to control. The investigation quickly expanded. Within weeks, the doctor lost his medical license and faced multiple fraud-related charges. The story spread through the community faster than anyone expected. People who had trusted him for years were stunned. But the moment I will never forget happened during a family gathering several weeks later. Patricia had no idea that the truth had already come out. She arrived with the same confidence she always carried, the same smug smile, the same belief that she had won. Then Daniel walked into the room. Behind him were 2 investigators carrying folders filled with evidence. The conversation stopped immediately. Patricia's face lost its color. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. The documents were placed on the table. Every payment, every email, every meeting, every lie. There was nowhere left to hide. Ryan sat silently as the truth unfolded in front of him. I watched the realization hit him piece by piece. The divorce, the accusations, the months of distance, the marriage we had destroyed. All because he chose to trust a lie instead of trusting me. When the meeting ended, Patricia walked out without saying a word. Her reputation was gone. Her influence was gone. And the control she had spent years building disappeared in a single afternoon. Later that evening, Ryan came to my house. His eyes were red. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "I know. I'm sorry." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he asked the question I had expected. "Can we start over?" I looked at the man I had once imagined spending the rest of my life with. A year earlier, I would have said yes, without hesitation. "But some wounds change you." "You didn't lose me because of your mother," I said calmly. "You lost me because you never trusted me." He lowered his head. There was nothing left to say. A few months later, I learned something beautiful. The independent specialist had been right. There was nothing wrong with me. For the first time in a long time, my future belonged to me again. And while Patricia had paid a doctor to ruin my marriage, she ended up destroying the only thing she truly cared about, her own family. Meanwhile, I finally found something she could never take from me.
Peace.